If serious illness has reduced your world to bedrooms or hospital rooms, waiting rooms, or screens, stepping outside may change far more inside your body than you realize. In this episode, you'll learn how time in nature can affect your nervous system, blood pressure, inflammation, and immune activity, why outdoor light is critical for the circadian rhythm that coordinates healing mechanisms, and how to receive some of these benefits regardless of where you are at in your healing journey right now. I'll help you create a simple nature practice based on your current strength and mobility that allows you to slowly work towards more time outside. Between 1972 and 1981, patients recovering from gallbladder surgery at a hospital in Pennsylvania were placed in rooms that looked nearly identical. The rooms were located in the same part of the hospital. The patients received similar care, but the view from the window was very different. Some patients looked out at a small group of trees. Others looked directly at a brick wall. Years later, researcher Roger Ulrich reviewed the medical records of 46 of those patients. He carefully matched them according to age, sex, smoking status, body weight, year of surgery, floor of the hospital, and previous hospitalizations. He found that the patients who could see trees from their hospital rooms spent less time in the hospital after surgery. Nurses recorded fewer negative health observations, and they required fewer doses of strong pain medication than the patients whose windows faced the brick wall. This was only a small observational study, but it raised a fascinating question that researchers have continued exploring ever since. Can the environment surrounding a person influence what happens during recovery? Shin Tereyama's story gives us a fascinating insight into how it just might. For decades, Shin Tereyama had pushed his body extraordinarily hard. By his 40s, he was running his own consulting company and often worked as many as 20 hours a day. His schedule began before sunrise and continued late into the night, filled with presentations, client visits, meetings, staff discussions, and preparation for the next day. At 46, his body began showing signs that something was wrong. He developed chronic exhaustion, and blood repeatedly appeared in his urine, although early tests failed to reveal the cause. Eventually, a doctor discovered that Shin's right kidney was enlarged and tender. An ultrasound revealed a large tumor, and surgery was recommended. Shin postponed it for 5 months because he did not believe he could step away from work. By the time he finally agreed, he was feverish and could barely walk. His right kidney had to be removed, and the pathology revealed advanced renal cell carcinoma. The cancer later appeared in his lungs and rectum. Shin underwent chemotherapy and radiation and remained hospitalized for months. Shin's wife was told that Shin was not responding enough to treatments and would die soon. His condition became so grave that friends and colleagues began visiting to say their goodbyes. During that period, Shin had a vivid dream that he was lying in a coffin at his own funeral. He woke with a renewed desire to live, and he also developed an unusually heightened sense of smell. The chemical and medical odors of the hospital became suddenly overwhelming to him. Desperate for fresh air, Shin left his room and made his way to the hospital roof. He spent the night outside, breathing in the fresh air. The next morning, nurses found him there and assumed he had been attempting to take his own life. Shin tried to explain that he had not gone to the roof to commit suicide. He had gone there because he needed to breathe. His physician didn't believe him and became angry and offered to discharge him. Shin returned home with his wife under hospice care, determined to take a more active role in how he lived whatever time remained. He was extremely frail. He needed a walker and was receiving nutrition intravenously. Yet every morning before sunrise, Shin made his way outside to the roof of his apartment building. There, he breathed deeply and watched the darkness give way to morning. He felt the first light of day reach his face, and he gave thanks that he had been granted one more day of life. This became a daily ritual. He was deliberately reconnecting with light, air, movement, gratitude, and the living world around him. Shin made other important changes as well. He quit his job and began relating to his body with love rather than hostility. He spent much more time with his wife and children, gradually reintroduced gentle movement, ate nourishing food, and began playing the cello again, which brought him immense joy. He also spent 1 week each month at a mountain healing center. There he soaked in natural mineral springs, ate fresh food, breathed deeply in the clean mountain air, and stepped farther away from the pace and pressure that had dominated his life for decades. Over the next 3 years, Shin's health gradually improved. CT scans performed every 6 months showed that the remaining cancer was slowly shrinking. Eventually, doctors found that the cancer was gone. Shin lived until the age of 87. He never returned to his previous work life. Instead, he continued prioritizing his health, his family, being outdoors in nature, music, love, and the daily practices that helped him feel connected to life. Clearly, nature was not the only part of Shin's healing journey, but nature was woven throughout the transformation. The fresh air on the hospital roof helped call him out of an environment he could no longer tolerate. The sunrise became his daily reminder he was still alive. The rooftop gave him light, breath, perspective, and gratitude to meet each new day. The mountain retreat gave his body repeated periods of quiet, clean air, natural surroundings, and distance from the relentless demands that had shaped his adult life. We tend to think of nature as something pleasant but optional. It's where we go on vacation, where we hike, or where we spend time after the important work is finished. But the body is never separate from its environment. Your nervous system is continually reading the light, sounds, movement, temperature, air, and sense of safety around you. Your eyes are sending information about the time of day to your brain. Your heart and blood vessels respond to whether you feel hurried or calm. And your surroundings can influence the conditions in which your body is being asked to heal. And serious illness can separate us from those natural conditions very quickly. Life begins revolving around appointments, test results, medications, infusion rooms, rehabilitation facilities, and long days spent in bed or on the couch. Pain, weakness, treatment side effects, infection concerns, or fall risk can make leaving home feel difficult. Sometimes that indoor season is necessary, but over time you lose contact with daylight, changing weather, natural sounds, open space, fresh air, and the living world outside of your diagnosis. And a serious diagnosis can place the body into a prolonged state of vigilance. The sympathetic branch of the nervous system helps mobilize the body when action is required. Heart rate can increase, blood pressure rises, muscles tense, attention narrows, digestion, deep rest, and other restorative processes that are necessary for healing become less important than dealing with immediate acute danger. That response is necessary when you need it, but healing becomes more difficult when the body rarely receives an opportunity to come out of that state. One of the most consistent findings in nature exposure research is that natural environments can shift autonomic activity away from sympathetic arousal and towards greater parasympathetic activity. The parasympathetic nervous system helps the body settle. Your breathing slows, heart rate decreases, digestion becomes more active, muscles can loosen, and the body is better able to conserve energy and direct resources towards maintenance, healing, and repair. In other words, it enters a state in which the body can focus on healing. In one study involving 420 people across 35 forests in Japan, sitting in a forest was associated with a 7% reduction in sympathetic activity and a 55% increase in parasympathetic activity compared with sitting in an urban environment. Researchers have also found modest reductions in heart rate and blood pressure during and after nature exposure. Results involving cortisol have been less consistent, but the overall nervous system pattern tells us something useful. Your body is constantly asking, where am I? What is happening around me? Does anything require my immediate attention? A hospital alarm, traffic, artificial light, crowded room, and an overflowing email inbox all demand something from the brain and in some way may signal danger. While trees moving in the wind, water flowing, birds calling, and clouds crossing the sky hold our attention more gently and signal safety. For a few minutes, the nervous system may begin recognizing that there is nothing in the immediate environment it has to solve, and those minutes are precious because they are minutes spent healing internally. Importantly, outdoor light also sets the body's internal clock. Special light-sensitive cells in the eyes communicate directly with an area of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which acts as the body's master circadian clock. This clock uses environmental light to determine when it is morning, when it is evening, and how the rest of the body should organize itself across the day. The circadian rhythm helps coordinate sleep and wakefulness, but its influence extends further than that. It affects melatonin, cortisol, body temperature, appetite, glucose handling, insulin sensitivity, and the timing of many metabolic and immune processes. In the morning, light entering the eyes helps tell the brain that the active part of the day has begun. This supports alertness and helps organize the normal daily rise and fall of cortisol, which is involved in energy availability and the body's response to physical and emotional demands. That same light exposure helps the body understand when darkness arrives later. Melatonin can then rise at the appropriate time, supporting sleep and nighttime processes that depend on it. When light exposure becomes weak and irregular during the day, while artificial light continues late into the evening, the body receives a confusing message about what time it is, and that confusion matters metabolically. Studies of circadian disruption have found changes in glucose tolerance, insulin sensitivity, cortisol production, and inflammation, even when food intake and other factors are controlled. You do not need to sit and stare at the sun. Simply allowing normal outdoor light to reach the eyes while you sit, stand, or walk outside provides the timing information your brain is designed to receive. For someone who is exhausted, sleeping poorly, or spending most of the day indoors, several minutes of outdoor light in the morning or earlier part of the day may be one of the simplest ways to help reestablish a clear rhythm between activity and rest. And some of the strongest long-term nature research involves cardiovascular health. Large studies involving millions of people have found that those living in greener areas tend to have lower rates of cardiovascular disease and cardiovascular death. The Louisville Green Heart Project planted more than 8,000 mature trees and shrubs in selected neighborhoods in South Louisville, Kentucky, while other similar areas remained unchanged. Researchers measured residents before and after the planting. People living in the newly greened areas showed levels of high sensitivity C-reactive protein that were 13 to 20% lower than those in the control areas. C-reactive protein is one measure of systemic inflammation and is associated with cardiovascular risk. This is a striking finding because researchers changed the environment and then measured a physiological change inside of the people living there, which tells us that the internal environment inside of a person can shift after the external environment changes. Trees may also interact with the immune system in another interesting way. Plants release aromatic compounds into the air. Trees emit compounds including alpha-pinene, beta-pinene, and limonene. Researchers often refer to these collectively as phytoncides. These compounds help plants defend themselves against insects and microorganisms. When humans spend time in forest environments, we breathe in some of them. Small studies have found increases in the number and activity of natural killer cells after extended forest exposure. Natural killer cells are part of the immune system surveillance team. They help identify infected and abnormal cells. In one report, higher natural killer cell activity remained measurable for days after participants returned from the forest. A small study involving gynecological cancer survivors also found a greater change in the percentage of natural killer cells among those exposed to inhaled phytoncides than among controls. Part of the difficulty in studying nature is that going outside rarely changes only one thing. You may receive brighter light, quieter surroundings, less screen time, gentle movement, fresh sensory input, and contact with other people at the same time. A person with dementia who participates in gardening may become more engaged, eat better, move more, or reconnect with a familiar part of their identity. Someone recovering from cancer may use a wooded trail as both gentle movement and a place to process everything that has happened. This makes it difficult for researchers to isolate one single mechanism. But it also explains why nature can be so useful in everyday life, because it brings several healing practices together without making them feel like another protocol. You're not necessarily going outside to exercise, meditate, regulate your nervous system, improve your sleep, and work on your mental health. You may simply be going outside, but the body can receive all of those experiences together when you do. And there's something else that nature gives us that is difficult to reduce to a biomarker, and that is that for a few minutes you spend outside, you get to remember, I'm not only a patient, I'm a living person inside of a living world, and it's a big, big world. Birds continue building nests, rain falls, seasons change, something is always growing, shedding, resting, or beginning again. In the observation of our world, we can experience awe, the feeling of encountering something so much larger than ourselves. Awe can interrupt the narrow focus that develops when fear and illness dominate attention, and sometimes that shift in perspective is exactly what the body and the mind need. So what does this mean for your healing journey? The research suggests that approximately approximately 20 to 30 minutes of intentional nature contact may offer meaningful benefits, and a large study involving nearly 20,000 people found that accumulation around 2 hours per week was associated with better health and well-being, including among people living with chronic illness or disability. But I don't want those numbers to become another standard you believe you must meet perfectly. First, start by bringing nature simply into view. If you are confined to a bed, chair, or hospital room, begin by changing what your eyes can see. Open the curtains and the window if possible so that your eyes are exposed to the UV rays that window glass blocks. Move your chair towards a window. Watch a tree, the sky, birds, rain, or the movement of light across the room. Place a plant, flowers, stones, shells, or other natural objects nearby. Listen to nature sounds when access to the outdoors is not possible. Looking through a window is not identical to sitting in a forest, but the hospital study reminds us that visual contact with nature still matters. The next step may be sitting beside an open door on a porch, balcony, patio, front step, or beneath a tree. No workout is required. You do not have to walk around the block or accomplish anything while you are there. Simply feel the temperature of the air, notice the light, and allow your eyes to look into the distance instead of remaining fixed on a screen. Someone in a hospital or care facility may ask whether there is a courtyard, garden, or outdoor seating area they can safely access. The important thing is to find an outdoor space you can spend time in. The next step is to give nature your attention. Going outside while answering emails or scrolling through your phone may not create the same experience, so put your phone away for several moments when you can. Notice what you can see moving. Listen for the nearest sound and then the farthest one. Feel the air against your skin. Notice when your breathing changes or your shoulders begin to relax. This is called practicing mindfulness, and the purpose is not to do it perfectly. It's to allow the natural environment to occupy more of your attention than your illness does for a few moments. Being present is a really powerful way to do that. The next step, when possible, is to spend several minutes outside in the morning or earlier part of the day, within 30 minutes of waking if possible, but if not, that's okay. Drink your tea on the porch, sit beside an open door, walk to the mailbox. Rest near a bright, open window when going outside is not possible, although outdoor light will usually be stronger. Make this part of your normal rhythm rather than one more complicated intervention. You might pair it with something you already do each morning, such as drinking water, taking supplements or medication, praying, journaling, or eating breakfast. The fifth thing to do is to add gentle movement as soon as it feels possible. If you are able, walk through the yard, around the garden, beneath a row of trees, or along a short path. The goal is not to work out. Movement simply allows you to experience more of the environment. Just let the movement match your current capacity, whether that's walking down the driveway or tending one small container garden. And the final step, as your body allows, is to work towards 20 minutes of nature contact at a time and approximately 2 hours minimum across the week. That might be one longer visit to a park, several short periods in the yard, gardening, sitting beside water, or combination of many small experiences. You do not need a pristine forest in Japan. Nature can be found in a city park, a backyard, farmland, a garden, a tree-lined street, or like Shin found, the sky above your apartment balcony. Healing can begin to feel like one long effort to identify and fix everything that is wrong, but nature offers a different experience. For a few minutes, it does not ask you to solve the diagnosis, interpret a symptom, make a decision, or achieve a result. It just asks you to simply notice and appreciate life just as it is. If you would like more support between episodes, I'd love to invite you to join my email newsletter. Each week, I share practical healing tools, reflections from the podcast, and encouragement for your healing journey. You can sign up through my website at therenegadenutritionist.com. If this episode encouraged you, follow Renegade Remission and share it with somebody else who might need it today. Go be renegades.